I just hit the go live button on my cell phone and it worked. So this is a first. Something I've kind of hoped to do because maybe some questions could steer better answers, better conversations. Who knows? But if this is recording and working. So, nuclear history, you have to go back to the Manhattan Project and maybe begin there. This looks really choppy. I'm not sure how it's going to look on video, but the Manhattan Project's design was based on compartmentalization. Need to know at every level. You weren't allowed to talk with your coworkers about many things. What you did at your desk. You couldn't speak to anyone but superiors about what was going on or if you had questions. You didn't meet other organizations that were on the floor above or below you. You had no idea where they were. You were in states across the nation. You were in secret sites across the globe. You were collaborating with other nations. Things like the internet and more advanced communications were being invented while this was going on so they could talk together. The Manhattan Projects, the reason the internet came about is because of the Manhattan Project and the sheer amount of money put into that effort. But it was all very well compartmentalized. Whoever was doing the nuclear research, the scientists, the engineers, didn't get to talk to the people doing the weapons design portions of it. Maybe. It very compartmentalized, very small group of people functioning together. If it's a good cohesive team, it's a very effective way to operate. But if it's not, well, it is how it is. So the lessons out of the Manhattan Project have come forward, this compartmentalization, this need to know. So as nuclear sales were going up, as these commercial nuclear reactors, that was the only thing that it could offer the civilian population because of safety reasons. These massive generating stations, massively overpriced now, oh my gosh. So it's interesting to see how this has evolved and changed over the years, but that compartmentalization still exists heavily. It's in corporate enterprises. There is technical secrets, technical details. There's manufacturing secrets and details. There's components, the metallurgy. All of these things end up getting patented and written down somewhere and owned by somebody, some corporation, let's call somebody. And anyone else wants to use it for commercial purposes, they will have to get licensed for it. And that's where you can get stopped in these endeavors. Patent and licensing. It's embedded inside corporate entities. That's one, they've got a bank of lawyers that are corporate patent lawyers making sure that these things get done. Now what has happened is most patents expire after 20 or it might be 23, have to double check. It's about 20 years, over 20 years patents expire, meaning that they become open to the public, open to other corporations. So finding those expired patents and capitalizing on them is a huge idea. But this compartmentalization goes on everywhere. Have you ever spoken with a patent attorney? Anyone know a patent attorney? Especially one that deals with secret patents. It's another world. It's a compartmentalized business operation. But it's a very complicated business operation. In order to bring somebody in, they have to understand fundamentals and basics. So that kind of creates the compartment. To bring somebody in takes hours, days, months, and years to familiarize with some of these processes and requirements and the background and history. You're doing research. If you see a new patent, you've got to go look and see what other patents might already exist against that in order to turn down a patent or a copyright. So this is one of the factors. You can't imagine the monies involved in this stuff. So when they were selling these nuclear reactors, one of the promises in all of the paperwork of these reactors was education and science and technology knowledge. It was a promise to this generation that as youth watch these plants being built and commissioned across the nation, the 140 some odd that are still out there with waste storage sites right next to them. So that's a challenge with nuclear, indeed. So yes, it's a very long, very complicated story. And where are we today for it all? We've got nuclear waste sites, low level, I don't know where medium levels fall in all of this, and high level waste sites across the nation. We have mining and tailing waste, polluting mostly tribal lands and waters from uranium mining waste. We have, as I mentioned, 140 nuclear power plants that have spent fuel, acres of spent fuel rods sitting in containers and casts or cooling pools. Now, all of those rods arrived there by rail or by truck or by train, maybe boat, and there they sit. Why they can't be moved is a good question, but where to move them is another problem. So there's unresolved issues inside this nuclear game that they ignore. They have ignored for decades. How do you get around that? Who do you press the buttons for? This is unchecked, unbridled capitalism. This is responsible people doing huge, massive chemical and nuclear activities on a commercial scale across the planet that don't want to have responsibility or accountability. That's a challenge. That's a tough one to put up with, watching it all your life go on. How does a nuclear crowd work? State of Ohio, they came in with $60 million, I think it was, in cash to hand out to the politicians, not to the clients, the customers that they've been getting these profits from. They handed it to a few hundred, maybe politicians, a few dozen, I haven't followed it that close. $60 million handed around. Now, the cost of handing that around also was probably at $1 million because there's a whole bunch of butt weasels out there that hand that money out and go out and make those connections and know who to connect with and who to contact. Millions of dollars these companies come up with to go out with a sales pitch. What's the sales pitch this year? Well, if you watch closely, there's one that's interesting. Civilian nuclear-powered ships. That's a new one I just saw pop up a couple of weeks ago. A few articles about it. You can go see if you can Google it. So somebody out there, these are the geniuses in the clubhouse, right? Somebody out there thinks these nuclear-powered ships are going to be a thing. There's this thing called non-proliferation. We want to go to war with, is it Iran, for their nuclear program? Well, actually, we want to go with war with Iran because they're the wrong religion. That's been going on since I was a fucking Marine. But we want to go to war with Iran because of nuclear materials. Iran wants to make commercial nuclear fuel. They would be one of 5 or 6 global corporations able to supply commercial nuclear fuel when their manufacturing process is done. The challenge is they probably don't know the specifications for these ship proposals. But you damn well straight, they better be able to bid on it. If nuclear is going to proliferate, then so be it, you ignorant fools. So those ships, private yachts powered by nuclear power, that one caught me by surprise. I thought their first approach would be trying to sell commercial ocean-going cargo vessels, nuclear reactors. They are much better monitored, much better regulated, believe it or not. But can you name a port besides naval yards that are ready to accept nuclear boats in their launches? Can you get a trailer for your nuclear boat? Questions, questions, questions. So they're out there. They're trying to make more. They're trying to have it both ways. And we're going to pay for it. Our kids are going to pay for it. Our kids are going to be wondering what the heck happened. It's like how we moved pollution over to China over decades. The industry, when the EPA came into being and wrote its laws about health and safety because it matters, these chemical pollutants, basically the industry spent 20 years offshoring a good bit of work. Some of the first sites the EPA had record of were dry cleaners. The map of dry cleaners that had polluted the area around them across the nation was in the thousands and thousands of these little dry cleaners that just were doing the wrong thing. So dry cleaning changed and it got more expensive, right? On that list, besides dry cleaners, were a lot of former automotive parts manufacturing plants. AC Delco was a major one, and I have experience with that entity to some degree with General Motors. They manufactured spark plugs out in suburbia somewhere. This little spark plug plant might make a few other things. Another plant might make air filters. Another plant, these were little plants, employed 100 people all across a lot in the Northeast. Well, like heavy industry packed up and moved, these chemical plants moved down to the south. They just moved their pollution south to more amenable states to pollution, less populated states at the time, and now they're covered with people, so they're going to run into the same problems. You run into cancer clusters. I think I pointed to a ProPublica article the other day about cancer clusters. And it's worth taking a look at. Where heavy industry is, disease rates go up. Where heavy industry is, there's a lot of low-income housing and living. Where heavy industry is, healthcare and hospitals in those areas disappear because they collect data about the health of the people in that area. And all of a sudden, you've got some triggers and warnings about the health of people in the area. Look at Mississippi, look at Louisiana as points of interest. All areas I've had the good time to visit professionally, either for oil field drilling or for instrumentation support, lab instruments, online process instruments in those chemical plants you drive by. People walk in and out of them. In order to get into one of those plants, I usually had half an hour to 2 hours of a training video, health and safety video. And then you get a little badge. It's good for a day or three. You can walk around. So, not right there. So yeah, that's life out there in the chemical world. Those plants have emissions, they have releases, whether you can consider nuclear and chemical the same thing. So yeah, big world out there. Anyway, peace is out. I might try this again. Leave a note or a comment. Thanks. Hope it worked. Practice run. See how it did.